Hey there, Book welcome back to my channel and welcome to A Closer Book. This is the series where I review 3 of my recent reads. We are now up to books 67 to 69 in the quest to read 102 books in 2017. So today we're talking about 1 nonfiction and 2 fiction reads. First up is The Dip by Seth Godin, and I've been reading a lot of his books this year. He writes a lot about entrepreneurship and creativity, and he asks very thought-provoking questions that are meant to help you come up with the right answers, that when you apply those answers, you will probably have a better understanding of your life and what you want out of it. His books are very short and very easy to read through, and they also have illustrations. And the fact that this one is only 80 pages makes me not even sure that I can call it a book, but the information was really good anyway. The focus of this one is whether or not you should quit the goal that you are pursuing. Yes, I know, it seems weird, but several times in this book he says quit often, quit as often as you need to, quit as early as you need to so that you don't waste your time, don't waste your resources. So what he says is that when you take up a new pursuit, you maybe sign up for a new class, you buy new materials, and there's this adrenaline rush with the process of starting something new. After that adrenaline rush ends, you have this period where you're still working towards this goal, and it's no longer as fun, it's no longer as rewarding, but you have to keep working at it if you want to master this new skill, this new thing that you are doing. However, after some period, you have to kind of take stock of where you are in your pursuit. Is this something that you are going to master? Is this something that you're going to be successful at? And will it be worth your time, your energy, and all the resources that you are investing? What the author is saying is that this period can continue for a long time, and eventually you need to figure out whether it is worth all the resources that you are expending. Quitting the projects that don't go anywhere, he says, is essential to being able to work on the right ones. I enjoyed the message in this book and I recommend it even if you don't buy it. I read a copy from the library, and I recommend that you either pick it up from the library or get a copy from the bookstore, and you can just stop in the bookstore and read it in the aisles for free. It's only 80 pages. Next up is Girlist Snow by Danya Kukafka, and I read a galley version of this book from NetGalley. A 16-year-old high school student has been found dead, strangled in the snow in front of the school, and the story is about the investigation, trying to find out who killed her and why. In the process of the investigation, however, we learned that she had a stalker, she had a relationship that just ended, she might have had a new relationship, and that she wasn't a nice girl, so there were people who didn't like her and might have wanted to do bad things to her. While the investigation focuses on the usual suspects, the neighborhood ex-con, her stalker, and her recent ex-boyfriend, as the story progresses, we learn that Lucinda was not a nice girl, so there were a lot of people who might have wanted to harm her. And every person who gives information may or may not be trying to throw the trail off themselves. The story is told from multiple perspectives. One perspective is from her stalker, who may or may not have witnessed the murder, but he has some mental issues. He blacks out often, so it makes him an unreliable narrator. Another perspective is from Jade, one of Lucinda's classmates, except that Jade is a liar and she might have had it in for Lucinda, so we're not sure if she's a suspect or she's just a really unreliable narrator. And then another perspective is from the detective, who we learn has some kind of conflict of interest because he's related to the ex-con. He's also related to another one of the suspects, and so he might be concealing information, which makes him an unreliable narrator. So it was very interesting to read a story that was being told from multiple perspectives when none of the perspectives seemed to be reliable enough to really give us the full story. When we meet Lucinda, she's already dead. And even though she's the focus of the investigation, she's not really the main character. So this is a story without a clear hero or heroine. And even the person who ends up saving the day has to be saved him/herself. And it makes for a very interesting read because we're never sure who we like. The characters are not at all likable. They are very complex, multi-dimensional characters. Very interesting from that standpoint. One of the issues that I had with the story is that I wasn't altogether sure who the target audience was supposed to be. The fact that most of the characters were teenagers and that there were these themes that focused on like mean girl getting her due, and revenge, and made it seem like the book was supposed to be for a young adult audience. However, there were also these mature characters in the book, the parents and the investigators, and we spent a lot of time looking at their lives and the things that they were dealing with, which made me think that it was not supposed to be for a young adult but a more mature audience. However, the fact that it had these two different kinds of focus meant that it wasn't altogether interesting for either one or the other. So that was a little bit of a drawback for me. I also didn't like how the book was resolved in the end. There were some alternate storylines that were being followed through the course of the book, and I didn't like how those things were resolved at the end. But overall, it was an interesting read, and those are things that I think could have benefited from a little editing. And the fact that I read this in the galley version, I'm not sure what the finished version is like, whether they actually corrected those things, because that's what I would do if I was an editor. Finally, book 69 is Man Tiger by Eka Kurniawan, and this is a novel that takes place in Indonesia in an unnamed town, but focusing on families and family structure and just life in a country that was colonized. And I think the story is supposed to be symbolic, like an allegory of all the things that is wrong with this country being a result of the country's history. Man Tiger is a cleverly crafted story about a father and a son who both have these characteristics of violence, and they exude their ferocity in various ways. The father beats his wife, his children, and the son, because he is powerless in his household, has to look outside for his targets. Because of the history of this country, we learn that these two men have inherited this warrior pose. And from the way the author presents the history, we learn that their ancestors before them have fought very important wars, but now that the struggle has ended and they're settled into normal domestic lives, the warrior blood that is surging inside of them has nowhere to go, and so they're always looking for ways to use up this rage. In the very first paragraph of the novel, we're told that a man has been killed, the murderer has been identified, and we spend the rest of the book trying to figure out why this murder took place. First, we meet the main characters. We're told about the events that have happened, and then we're invited into this backstory, kind of into this back room where we get to see all the things that have caused these people to become the people that they are when we meet them. What are some of the things that shaped this young man into becoming a murderer? What are the things that shaped this older man into becoming the person who was murdered? And so as we learn the history of these individuals, the history of their families, the history of their community, we start to question, is this person really a victim or an aggressor? Finally, the murder is described in as graphic a detail as I can ever remember reading, but I understand that the author wanted to shock me to really bring me into this event. The author chose to include these supernatural elements, including this tiger, as a way to personify the rage that these young people probably feel by growing up in a society and feeling impotent to do anything to really change their society other than resorting to violence. I felt like that was really brilliant to include it, but it might also have been a little confusing because then the focus seemed to be you have no choice. Like the tiger exists inside of you, like you can't choose the rage finds you and inhabits you, and you are not able to control yourself. So I feel like the author kind of put them on this path where this was their destiny and they had no way to control what happened to them. As is expected in the Muslim community, the society is patriarchal and the women are regarded as property and defended as such. The central characters are male, and the women change hands through contracts, meaning arranged marriages, through theft, meaning infidelity, or through death, whether the death of the woman or the death of the person who owns her. The imagery in this book was brilliant, and I love the author's description of things like the plants that could be domestic, but that could also become a jungle if left untamed. I love the allegory and the way he symbolized Indonesian life, Indonesian culture, the history and the geography and the relationships and the society and the religion. I also enjoyed the ambiguity in the protagonist/hero definitions, because at all points we weren't sure whether the victim was actually a victim or the aggressor. My main criticism of the book was the author's refusal, I think, to connect some of the threads in the end, as though leaving them loose deliberately, not to throw me off, but to show me that there sometimes isn't any explanation for the things that have happened. Overall, I really enjoyed the book. I gave it around a 4-star rating. And I felt like if the author had connected some things, I might have given it a higher rating, even though I understand why he didn't do it. And so that's it. That's A Closer Book. at these 3 recent reads. Join me in my next video where I'll talk about 3 more recent reads. I'm still behind in reviewing these books and I want to review them a little bit more quickly, so look out for more videos coming soon. Thanks for watching this video. Please leave me a comment if you've read any of these. I want to chat about them, or if you've read something else by these authors, I want to recommend them to me. Go ahead and leave that in the comment box as well. So we'll talk down there, and until next time, happy reading. Bye.